Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel, Daily English Spark. Today we have a beautiful and inspiring story about a man who changed the world with his ideas, Steve Jobs. He started from almost nothing, but his vision, creativity, and passion made him one of the greatest minds in history. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this true story. Steve Jobs, the man behind Apple. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the bell so you never miss our new stories. Early life. The curious boy. Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco, California. But his life began with a big change. His birth parents were young and not ready to take care of him. So Steve was adopted by a kind couple, Paul and Clara Jobs. Paul was a mechanic, a man who loved to fix things. Clara worked as a bookkeeper. They were not rich, but they gave Steve love, care, and freedom to explore. As a little boy, Steve was full of questions. He wanted to know how things worked. He would take apart radios and televisions and try to put them back together. Sometimes he failed, but his father never got angry. Paul told him, if you want to do something right, do it with love and attention. That idea stayed in Steve's mind forever. At school, Steve was smart, but not always easy to teach. He didn't like boring lessons. He wanted to think differently. His teacher said he was creative, but restless. He liked to explore ideas on his own. One day, his teacher gave him a project to make a poster. Steve worked hard and made something special. His teacher was surprised. She said, "Steve, you have a gift." Love for technology. When Steve was a teenager, his family moved to a city called Cupertino in California. It was the early time of what we now call Silicon Valley, a place where technology was growing fast. Steve met other young people who loved electronics. He became friends with Steve Wozniak, a shy but brilliant engineer. Wozniak loved to build small machines and play with computer circuits. Jobs loved to dream big and imagine how those machines could change people's lives. The two Steves became best friends. They shared one dream, to build something great. The birth of Apple. In 1976, when Steve Jobs was just 21 years old, he and Wozniak decided to start their own company. They didn't have money or a big office. They worked in Steve's parents' garage. That small garage became the birthplace of Apple Computer. Their first product was called the Apple I, a small personal computer. It was simple, but it was something new. Before that, computers were big, expensive, and used only by companies or universities. Jobs and Wozniak wanted to make computers that everyone could use, at home, at school, at work. When they showed their computer to a local store, the owner was impressed and ordered 50 pieces. Jobs was excited. He said, "Let's change the world." They worked day and night to make it happen. Soon, they created the Apple II, which became a big success. People loved it because it was colorful, easy to use, and fun. By the age of 25, Steve Jobs was a millionaire. Thinking differently, Steve Jobs was not an engineer like Wozniak, but he had something special: vision. He could see what people wanted before they knew it. He believed that technology should not only work well, but also look beautiful. Jobs once said, "Design is not just what it looks like. Design is how it works." He was famous for paying attention to every small detail. He wanted Apple computers to be simple, clean, and elegant. He would spend hours choosing colors, buttons, and finishes, and shapes. Some people thought he was too demanding. He wanted perfection. He was sometimes hard to work with, but those who worked with him said that he made them do their best work. Failure and return. In 1984, Apple launched the Macintosh, a computer that changed everything. It had a mouse, a screen with pictures, and was easy to use. It was a big step for technology, but soon after that, things went wrong. The company began to have problems. Other people in Apple disagreed with Jobs. They said he was too emotional and made quick decisions. In 1985, something shocking happened. Steve Jobs was fired from Apple, the company he had created. He was only 30 years old. He felt sad, lost, and angry. But instead of giving up, he used this moment to grow. He said later, "Getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have happened to me. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life." New beginnings. After leaving Apple, Jobs started a new company called Next. It focused on powerful computers for education and business. The company was small, but it taught him valuable lessons about leadership and design. At the same time, Jobs bought a small animation studio called Pixar. The studio was struggling, but Steve saw its potential. He believed that computers could help tell animated stories in a new way. After years of hard work, Pixar created Toy Story, the first full-length movie made entirely with computers. It became a global hit. People loved it. Pixar became one of the most successful animation studios in the world. Steve was back on top, not as a computer engineer, but as a storyteller and dreamer. Returning to Apple. By the mid-1990s, Apple was in trouble. The company that once led the market was losing money. The board of directors looked for help, and they turned to the man who started it all, Steve Jobs. In 1997, Steve Jobs returned to Apple as CEO. The company was broken, but Jobs came with new energy and ideas. He told his team, "The only way to do great work is to love what you do." He simplified Apple's products and focused on design and quality. Soon, he introduced the iMac, a colorful, modern computer that became a hit. But Jobs wasn't done yet. He dreamed of creating products that would change the way people lived. Changing the world. In 2001, Apple launched the iPod, a small music player that could hold thousands of songs. Jobs said, "1,000 songs in your pocket." It changed how people listened to music forever. Then came the iTunes Store, where people could buy songs online easily. In 2007, Jobs stood on stage and introduced something that would change the world again, the iPhone. He said, "Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone." The iPhone was not just a phone. It was a music player, a camera, and a mini computer in your hand. It changed the way people connected, worked, and lived. A few years later came the iPad, another big success. Steve Jobs had turned Apple into the most valuable company in the world. Health struggles. But behind all the success, Steve Jobs was fighting a serious health problem. In 2003, he was diagnosed with a rare type of cancer. He tried to keep working, but his body grew weaker. He had surgery and took breaks, but he always returned to work, pushing his team to continue creating new things. Even when he was sick, he came to the stage to present new products. People could see that he was thin and tired, but his spirit was strong. He once said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life." The final days. In 2011, Steve Jobs stepped down as CEO of Apple. He wanted to spend his last months with his family, his wife Lorene, and his 4-child. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away at the age of 56. The world was shocked and heartbroken. People around the globe remembered him, not just as the founder of Apple, but as a man who believed in the power of dreams. They left flowers and messages outside Apple stores. Many wrote, "Thank you, Steve." Legacy: Steve Jobs changed how we live, work, and communicate. He changed music, movies, and technology. But more than that, he changed how people think. He taught us to believe in our dreams, even when others say they are impossible. He taught us to keep learning, to keep trying, and to keep moving forward. Jobs once said, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." It means never stop dreaming, never stop learning, and never stop taking risks. Today, every time you use an iPhone, an iPad, or a Mac, remember that it all began with a young man in a small garage, a man named Steve Jobs, who dared to think differently.